29 minutes ago, a whisper crossed the veil between the divine and the forgotten. A message, not for the world, not for many, but for you. Yes, you, who keeps wondering why the clock ticks louder each night, who keeps seeing signs and brushing them off as coincidence. But this isn't coincidence anymore. This is God speaking, and it's about your age. It's about what's finished. And if you don't open your eyes now, you may never get another chance. The old clock in the corner struck once. It didn't ring out like it used to. It groaned, like an ancient soul tired of holding back truths. Rayhan sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor. His phone read 3:03 a.m. The rest of the world was asleep, but he couldn't sleep. Not tonight. Not after what he saw in the mirror just 29 minutes ago. He had just come out of the shower, wiping steam from a glass. That's when he noticed something strange. The mirror didn't show his usual self. Not fully. His reflection was blurred, faded, and across the glass, something was written. Not by hand, not by marker, but etched in the fog as if by invisible breath. It's finished. This is about your age. At first, he laughed it off, convincing himself it was a prank of condensation. But the letters didn't fade. They burned into his vision, flickering like old film frames. Then, his phone buzzed with notification. From an app he didn't remember installing. The message read, 29 minutes left. Open now. God says it's time. His heart pounded. He looked around his room. Nothing moved. No windows open. No sound from the hallway. But there was a weight in the air, like something sacred and terrible had just walked through his soul. He had never been the kind to believe in signs. But this didn't feel like a metaphor. It felt like a verdict. Rayhan was 29 years old. Just last week, he had celebrated his birthday, alone, with a cupcake and fake smile for social media. He had everything he thought he wanted. A decent job, a nice apartment, an Instagrammable life. But it all felt hollow. He lived for validation, but inside he felt like a walking ghost, always running from something, always pretending to be okay. But tonight, the pretending had stopped, because God doesn't send messages for fun of it. And when the divine interrupts time, you better listen. Rayhan opened the app. The screen flashed, then went black. A voice, not robotic but ancient, whispered to the phone. You have lived 29 years, but you've not been alive. You have chased shadows. Now you must choose, remain asleep or awaken before the next minute ends. Goosebumps prickled his arms. The words weren't just sound. They were truth. They sank into his bones like ice. The app began showing fragments of his life, like surveillance footage from heaven. He saw himself at 19, betraying a childhood friend for status. At 23, ghosting someone who loved him deeply because he was afraid. At 27, lying to himself daily, saying, I'll change tomorrow, 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 tomorrow. A promise he kept postponing until the soul inside him grew quiet. The voice returned. God does not send warnings to destroy, but to awaken the dead within the living. You still have time, but it is draining. He didn't know what to do. He paced the room. He looked at the clock. 3:05 a.m. That meant only 27 minutes left. What was he supposed to open? His heart? His eyes? His destiny? Then he remembered his grandmother's Quran, the one she gave him the day she died. It had sat unopened on his shelf for 5 years, wrapped in white cloth, gathering dust. He rushed to the bookshelf, trembling. His fingers touched the fabric. It was warm, as if it had been waiting for this moment. He unwrapped it. The second the cover opened, a sudden gust of wind swept through the room, even though the windows were sealed. Pages fluttered wildly, then stopped on a verse, Surah Al-Hadid 57:16. Has the time not come for those who have believed that their hearts should become humbly submissive at the remembrance of Allah? He dropped to his knees. Tears flowed. It wasn't guilt alone. It was the recognition of how much time he had wasted, how many blessings he had ignored, how long he had worn a mask while his soul screamed behind it. And in that moment he understood this wasn't about death. It was about life. The age that had finished was the age of running. The era of excuses, of delay, of pushing faith to the back seat and chasing illusions. This was the call to awaken. Not tomorrow, not next month, now. But what did he do with the second chance? He took a breath and looked at the phone again. It now showed a countdown, 21 minutes left. Underneath it, a single word. Speak. Speak what? Then it hit him. Confession. Release. Truth. He began to speak, not to the app, not to a person, but to the divine. For the first time in years, his voice cracked with sincerity. I'm sorry, he whispered. I wasted so much. I lived for approval and died a little every day. I thought I was fine, but I've been asleep. Please give me a new beginning. And then silence. Complete, holy silence. Not empty, but sacred. It felt like the world was holding its breath for him. Then the app screen changed. A simple sentence appeared. You just took your first breath. Rayhan felt lighter. Not saved, not transformed overnight, but alive. The weight that clung to his chest like a stone began to loosen. He knew this wasn't the end of his problems, but was the end of living in pretense. He had opened something no eye could see, his real self. And in that opening, God had answered. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. A new notification. 12 minutes left. There is one more thing you must do. His pulse quickened. He didn't know what it was, but something told him the second part of this awakening was even more important. The first was truth. The next was action. 12 minutes left. That's all the time Rayhan had, not to save his life, but to wake up from the one he'd been blindly living. The countdown wasn't about death. It was about the death of excuses, of delay, of spiritual sleep. He had confessed. He had opened his soul. He had begun to breathe again. But God wasn't done with him yet. There was still one more thing. And time was slipping away. Rayhan stared at the phone screen. 12 minutes left. There's one more thing you must do. He felt his heart beat slow, not in panic, but in purpose. For the first time in years, he wasn't afraid of the unknown. He wanted to walk into it. He needed to. A quiet breeze moved through his room, brushing his skin like a whisper from the unseen. It felt like an instruction without words. He instinctively knew this next task wasn't digital. It wasn't on his phone. It was out there, beyond the walls, beyond the safety of routine. He glanced at the clock. 3:18 a.m. 10 minutes left. He grabbed his hoodie, slipped on his shoes, and left the apartment. The streets were dead silent. Not even the usual hum of distant traffic, as if the world had pressed pause, waiting to see what he would choose. Every footstep echoed with weight. Every breath was a prayer without sound. He didn't know where he was going until his feet took him there. The old park by his childhood home. The place where, long ago, he used to sit with his mother and listen to stories of angels, prophets, and the mercy of a God who sees all hearts. He hadn't been there in years. When he arrived, something stirred in him. The swings creaked in the night air, and the familiar trees stood like sentinels from a forgotten life. He sat on the same bench where his mother once held his hand and said, "Never let your heart go too far from God. The farther you run, the louder the silence becomes." And now that silence had grown deafening. His phone buzzed again. 8 minutes left. You must forgive. His throat clenched. Forgive? He thought this was about him. His sins. His repentance. His awakening. But now, it was about the chains he still carried. The people who had hurt him. The betrayals he never spoke of. The grudge he dressed as strength. Forgive? His mind raced. He thought of his father, the one who left him and his mother when he was 12. Never said goodbye. Never came back. He thought of the best friend who spread lies behind his back just to win a promotion. Of the girl who promised forever, then vanished without a word. Of the cruel words, the mocking laughs, the dismissals, the rejections. And suddenly, the weight in his chest returned. Was he really supposed to let all that go? He stared at the sky. It was still deep and starless, as if even the heavens were waiting on his answer. He stood slowly, closed his eyes, and spoke. "I forgive you," he said into the cold air. "All of you. Not because you deserve it, but because I don't want to carry your sins on my soul anymore. I release you. I release myself. The wind picked up soft and sudden. It blew through the trees like applause only God could hear. His phone screen flickered again. 5 minutes left. One more thing. A pulse of tension tightened his chest. What more could there be? Then it came, not as a message, but as a memory. 3 years ago, Rayhan had seen a homeless man outside a mosque. The man was shivering in winter, holding a cardboard sign that simply read, "I have no one." Rayhan had walked past him that day, eyes down, heart cold. He had money in his pocket, warmth in his coat, but he left the man behind. That memory now clawed at his heart like a wound freshly torn. He looked around the park. Empty, but something pulled him to the nearby street corner. And there, under the flickering street lamp, sat an old man in tattered clothes, cradling a plastic bag as a pillow. Rayhan's breath caught. It wasn't the same man, but it was the same moment. God had brought it back, not to punish him, but to offer redemption. No hesitation. Rayhan approached, removed his hoodie, gently draped it over the man, then sat beside him. The old man stirred, looked up with weary eyes. "Why are you here?" he asked, voice cracking. Rayhan smiled softly. "Because I almost missed my life, but I won't miss this moment." He reached into his wallet, gave him all the cash he had, but more than that, he offered his hand. Not charity, not pity, brotherhood. The man took it. Tears welled up. He said nothing more, and neither did Rayhan, because the silence wasn't loud anymore. It was holy. His phone buzzed for the last time. 1 minute left. Now look in the mirror. Rayhan stood up, heart pounding, not from fear, but transformation. He rushed back home, through empty streets now filled with meaning. At 3:29 a.m., he reached his apartment. The digital clock blinked, now showing 3:30 a.m. exactly. He entered his bathroom. Fog mirror. Familiar scene. He stared, waiting for something to appear. Then, slowly the fog cleared. And for the first time in 29 years, he didn't see a mask, or a shell, or a man pretending to be fine. He saw himself, eyes softened by truth, face marked by purpose, soul finally awake. And just beneath the mirror's surface, as if etched in divine ink, appeared a final message. Your age of sleep is over. Welcome to your real life. Not everyone gets a second chance, but some are chosen for it, not because they're perfect, but because they're ready. Ready to stop performing, ready to stop pretending, ready to start living. Rayhan's story isn't rare. It's yours. It's mine. It's everyone who's ever felt that tug in the middle of the night, that whisper that says, "Enough, it's finished. Wake up." So if you're reading this, if you felt that whisper, if something inside you has started to stir, then maybe the countdown is for you too. And maybe, just maybe, this is your minute zero. Open it before it closes forever.